Hey, what up, guys? RezRootz here. My name is Will. Welcome back. So today we have an exciting episode here. Our brother over here, cousin brother, Che, uncle. No, it's
Uncle's fine.
Yeah. Anyways, we have a pretty cool episode here as our Kyon here went on what was it called? A vision trip?
A vision trip.
A vision trip to Egypt. But, I would introduce you, but you are really well familiar with RezRootz, so everyone knows you.
I hope so.
So you've been on here for a minute. Well, before we just get started, it's kind of, you're going into your last semester of IBC as you're a big boy senior now.
No, but you're taking off my kitty shoes.
Yeah. So how do you feel about going into your final semester? I know that's a big left turn I just threw at you, but
I think it's a lot of ambivalence, just mixed emotions. I'm excited, but I'm also like bummed out too. It's like, oh dang, it's like last year. Where did all these years go? Just spent too much time, fiddling around in my room. It's like, oh, sorry. Spent too much time in just lounging around and doing homework. But yeah, it's just, I guess, the things are settling in. There is like a lot of heavy emotion. Just talking with some of the other upperclassmen that I'll be graduating with. And we're kind of all feeling the same thing. It's like a lot of ambivalence. We're excited, but we're also like, it's the reality of it is just setting in and like just going our separate ways and stuff. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I feel that because it's like senior seminars, like every class session, you're probably gonna some tear jerkers or might be crying. Who knows? But
so 5 boxes of tissues every day,
yeah,
or every week for that class.
Yeah, so basically, you gotta go in there and like ask Jason, all right, what are we crying about today? It's on today's session here. What we're crying
I'll
over.
just bring in my MTS workbook.
Yeah. Might as well. No. It is a really good class too. I love it because it's kind of like a surreal thing because you're in there with people that you kind of started with, or you've done the IBC journey for years, and now you guys are like, this is it.
Yeah, I think the reality of that too set in when I had the first class started Thursday. And getting our introduction and just talking about it, how we were feeling, like those, when I started back in 2018, it's like memories of that started back up with the class I started with, class members, students, and remembering the student council at the time and, just going through that is like, so it was a heavy, like good, maybe 15 minutes that I was really sitting there. And then when class ended, we were praying, and then Jason asked us to pray for ourselves and what is, over the next 4 months, and what does the future look like after. And so just in that time frame, it was really thinking a whole lot of everything that, just happened within those 6 years since 2018, minus 2 years.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So, gonna transition here into when it comes to like being in the mission field. So, what inspired or what called you? Like, what impacted you to go into the mission field? That your desire to go to the mission field.
Just the memory of, well, I should say, it started with my grandfather. If you're on the Navajo Nation, you probably know the name Emmanuel Yazzie, and who was a Navajo code talker at the time, but he was also a well-respected Navajo missionary in our community and on the Navajo Nation. And he was the one that really emphasized it in our church as far as I can remember growing up. Hearing him talk, like every Sunday, he would be sitting there Sunday morning leading Sunday school, and nobody has arrived. Everyone like arrives either like 30 minutes late. For my family, would always arrive on time. My mom and dad and our siblings, and we would just pop on in right on time. But everybody else flows in like 30 minutes, an hour late. And yeah, typical Res Church.
Yeah.
But you know, he would always. For as far as I remember, and even my mom will say the same thing, my dad too, he was always talking from the book of the Gospel of John. But you know, he always emphasized Jesus's heart for people. And he would always go back to quoting either John 3:16 or Matthew 28:18 through 20. I think that's and he would always be praying, you know, for missionaries to go out, people to be witnessing and evangelizing and go into the reservation, go into the communities, but also, you know, going beyond the reservation and beyond, you know, our country and into the world to spread the gospel. That was his prayer. And eventually, you know, over the years that his life, and I knew his life pretty well through my parents and his kids, my family members, and you know, we all respected him for the work that he did for God, but mostly I should say the work that God did through him, and you know how that impacted a lot of churches within our community. And when he passed, there was a lot of respect given to him, just not only by believers but also by non-Navajo believers. Is that right?
Yeah.
By Navajo non-believing or something like that. Navajos who, you know, are a part of the Navajo tradition, you know, they had a lot of respect for him, and they talked well about his character and how he led a good example. And, you know, that's really the only good example I had. My dad was also a minister, kind of, I don't know how to talk about it. He was a minister in the Indian rodeo ministry during the 80s at the time, and he was another one. My mom had a desire to be in the mission field. She wanted to go overseas and be a part of, you know, I don't know what mission org she would have been at the time. But, you know, she got married, she settled down, had kids, and so, but now that I'm taking that step towards the mission field, you know, she's really living her heart out through me. And so whatever she didn't get to do, you know, I'm pretty much taking up the reins in a lot of that. So she was really excited about it. But there are several other Navajo ministers on the reservation during, you know, my grandfather's time, Lemuel's time, that he was well acquainted with. And there are other missionaries I'm well aware of who really had I guess you could say, planted the flag for Christ in a lot of areas during the 40s, maybe 30s at the time. So I heard a lot of those missionary stories, you know, really impacted me. That soon pushed me into the desire for the mission field. And eventually we met a missionary who was looking for Native people to go into the global mission field. And we got connected to him through, you know, other mission friends that we had connected with. And he basically, you know, reached out to me, you know, invested a lot of time with me, talked with me, asked me a lot of questions. And eventually, you know, he asked me, you know, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? And shared with him my desire and possible locations where, you know, I probably could serve. And he really, you know, prayed with me, and in a way, not in a way, but he really mentored me, and mentored my heart and guided me along that route. And that's really where I've come to have that desire for the mission field.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like it because, you know, I'm not saying in a bad way or anything either. It's kind of like a common thing for Native believers. Mm-hmm. You know, they go get training and all that stuff and then head back to the res. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in your case, it's, you want to go out to the mission field. And the cool thing about that too is that you already have that similarity in the,
Yeah.
when it comes to like minority, or there's a lot similar in culture wise, and poverty and all that stuff. But so next question, I just wanted to ask, like, what all trips have you done? Because, like, if I can remember, it was Mexico, Kenya,
now Egypt, and Jordan.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool, man. So the recent one that you just did was Egypt. So you can go ahead and tell us how your trip went, and just.
So, well, this trip is not a mission trip. It was actually a vision trip that I went on. Basically, the entire trip is to get connected with some teams that were already, located in these areas, and to observe how they are working in these locations, the people that they're ministering to, mostly nomadic people, Bedouin tribes, Berbers, and just seeing how, God is using them. I have an idea of like what I could be doing in a mission field, but being on this trip really helped open my eyes a little bit as to what gifts, whatever talents I may have, experiences, training that, I've accumulated in my life, and how it can be applied, whatever hobbies I may have too, and seeing in certain areas as to how where I can fit in some place. And because it's not just, going in and evangelizing right away. You can't really do that in the 1040 window. And like the country itself, is like evangelism is closed off. So you have to find creative ways to be a part of the people. And so that's where the idea of what, IBC's, the goals and purpose for every student and the vision for their students is, it's not about, just going in head first with your Bible and, standing on a street corner and preaching the gospel, but it's actually, what we learned here through the life of Christ is building and establishing relationships, being a part and immersed in the world that you are coming into. And that's what I've learned through the work teams, I'll call them. That's what I learned through them, how they're engaging with the people by learning the language, getting connected with community people in the community, in the public, whether that's in the workplace or just going out, to the coffee shop, to the marketplaces, and just engaging with people all around. And that's how a lot of them, got to meet people that they're actually ministering with, is actually just networking that way. And not just confining themselves, to one certain method, one point of view, one standpoint, but it's actually, opening themselves up to immersing themselves to the world around them. And so, what was the question? Was I doing good?
Yeah, you're on track. It was just kind of like you're just just giving a good summary of your trip in Egypt.
Okay. So. Yeah, so that's really what I was doing on this trip, observing a lot of things in that way, and I kind of got a good feel as to where I could be and how I could utilize a lot of my hobbies, a lot of my talents, certain giftings, and even like, branching off into something new that, I have no idea, but I can get possible training in, and eventually, do something that, nobody else has ever done before. And so that's where it all started when I left from here, in Phoenix at Sky Harbor Airport, flew to LA, got my connecting flight all the way to Doha, Qatar. From Qatar, flew into Cairo, Egypt. And that's where I met my first work team. And I was really excited to know that the team leader there is actually from Arizona. So it's pretty cool to be familiar with somebody in that way. And the more he kept opening up about himself, he lost his wife just a few years ago to health condition, and he was already here in Egypt, because his son was looking to join the mission field, and he eventually that landed him in Egypt, and that's what going with him. At first, his wife wasn't for it, but the team leader that I met, he basically told his wife, let's just keep this open. This is God's calling for him, and let's just see where it goes. And he told his wife, I'll go with him and see what it's all about. And so he went with his son to Egypt, and he said, I was immersed with all the people, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed what I could. And I felt, that this is my son's calling, but I come to understand this is also my calling. So that's eventually how he came to Egypt. Yeah, but then certain health conditions with his wife came along the way, and then COVID happened too, and he was going through a really hard time, both mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, just through his wife. Eventually he lost his wife, and he was looking for direction, and he was connected with Tom and Delphina's team with COVID, and he knows Tom and Delphina Johnson. That's her last name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But he knows them. He was helping. He even got to. He told me too. Like, he was here on campus. He saw the campus. He saw the food distribution that they were doing here, and doing a lot of transfers out to Gray Mountain area and being out on the reservation. I guess all of that, prepared him for life in Egypt. So he got to experience Navajo life on the Navajo Nation. He got to meet a lot of Navajo families, see what family life is like, the social life, even the economic part, the politics that were going on. And all of that, prepared him for what was going on in Egypt. And when he got to Egypt, when I finally got to Egypt, he told me right away that there is a lot of similarities to what I've seen on the Navajo Nation, that, for you coming in, it's not going to be a major adjustment for you. You're going to fit right in. And sure enough, when I got to Egypt, it was like dogs in the street, cats in the street, the uneven road pavements, and like
desert too.
There's deserts and dirt roads and camels, goats, sheep, cows. I haven't seen cows, but sheep and goats all over the road, and people, the shepherds on one side of the highway, houses that could be like, Navajo Housing Authority on the reservation. So that could be NTUA over there. But the world itself, there in the Middle East, there in that part of the Middle East, there was really a lot of familiarity already, but there were still some differences, especially like the division of genders. Even though like the country itself, it may be conservative, but there's a lot of liberty that I've seen. There's a lot of Western influence, but they still follow a lot of the cultural norms of their life. And yeah, so that was pretty much it. Cairo was a real whirlpool for me. I don't know how to explain Cairo. It's just I don't know how to say it. It's like no rules.
Oh, wow.
Because for one thing, it's like crowded streets, and there's like people walking through these streets, and vehicles are going through, and motorcycles are blazing through, and like I said, cats and dogs everywhere too. And like there's people, like shops will open at 12 o'clock, maybe a little bit early, like 10 or 11, but majority of all the market shops, retail stores would open at 12, and they go all the way until like 1, 2, or maybe 5 in the morning. And that's how late they're open. Coffee shops are actually open later. They're open in the morning. I shouldn't say that. coffee shops are actually 24 hours, and those coffee shop owners are just, just serving the people like sleeplessly, and they stop, have a coffee, then they pop a cigarette, or they're over there smoking their shishas, and or we call them hookahs over here.
Hookahs, yeah.
But it's just like, that's it. It's like kids are playing in the street at 2:00 in the morning, and like parents are okay with it. It's like, for here in the reservations, like kids better be back indoors. Like,
yeah, street lights come on.
Street lights come on like 9:00, 10:00, and better be not out, because skinwalkers will come and get you.
Yeah.
drag you to the wash.
Yeah.
But no matter what, but that first week being in Egypt was like, I don't want to say culture shock, but it was just shocking to see all of that and to take it all in. I did feel a little anxiety. I did, that pressure that comes with anxiety. But it's just like, it's way out of your norm. But it's just normal too. Like, I mean, if you're growing up in Phoenix or wherever, where the lights don't turn off, it's like, it's pretty normal, probably normal for you to be there. But for me, it wasn't. But it was okay, and I really enjoyed it despite that shock. Got to go to the pyramids and see the Sphinx. That was really surreal too. I think that it was at that moment I realized, I'm actually here. It was settling in. Like, I'm seeing the pyramids. I'm actually touching the pyramids right here. I'm touching, I don't know how old they are, 4,000, maybe 5,000 years old, however old they may be. But just walking there is like, and Abraham saw this, Isaac saw this, and all the way to Joseph, Hebrew travelers, going from Israel to Egypt, they saw all these, and I'm almost walking in their same footsteps that they tread, even though a lot of it probably just, deteriorated away over time. But it was pretty cool. Didn't get to ride any camels.
That was one of my questions.
As nice as it would have been, seeing the camels there, I was like, I'm glad I didn't ride any of them. And here, I'll be a little honest as to why. Is like, they were really stinky. Okay. Anybody who grew up on the ranch, it smells like a sheep. They smell just like a sheep corral or a cattle ranch. It was that raunchy smell. And what's worse too is like people who got on camel rides. I was around the Khufu pyramid, and there was a part of the pyramid experience where you get to go inside the pyramid and go up to the tomb of the tomb of the pharaoh of that pyramid. But going in there is like, that was another experience. It was so hot in there. Yeah, it was really muggy. And people who got camel rides, you could smell them. And it just traveled all the way through that passageway.
Yes, no air ventilation.
No ventilation whatsoever. We got to the tomb part in the middle of the pyramid, and it's like they had AC systems in there, air conditioning, and I don't think they were even working, and they probably weren't. It wasn't even helping anything. It was hot in there. And the Egyptian guides that were leading people through it were telling people like, all right, get your picture and get out. But I was full support of them. It's like, we need to, it's hot in here. I'm sweating up a storm. Man. But it was like, that whole system could have been managed better. But either way, it was just not good experience. But I enjoyed it. I posted some of the pictures on my Instagram page. Some of the students here got to see it, but it's pretty cool. But that whole time, I was having, movies running through my head. The Mummy Returns, The Scorpion King, and even like the Assassin's Creed game, Origins. Yeah. So I really want to go outside and climb the pyramid and slide down.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah, but I was there in Cairo for 3 days, and eventually from there we went out to the Sinai Peninsula, near St. Catherine's, and saying it. There's two ways of saying it: St. Catherine or St. Catherine's. We were near St. Catherine's was actually just around the corner, around the mountain actually, from where we were staying at, called Fox Camp. And it was a nice place, like a little oasis against the mountain. These little hotels that they had, little inns that they had made of concrete and brick, and pretty cold in the morning. But the blankets were very nice. They had really nice thick blankets, it's like the ones with the tiger prints on them.
Yeah.
Those really thick blankets.
Yeah.
If you're from the 90s or 80s, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it was a very good experience, and that really was I could say life-changing, because just right around the corner is St. Catherine's, but right around St. Catherine's again, like this whole 180 around the mountain was actually Mount Sinai. And I got to hike Mount Sinai and camp up on top for a night. What? I got to see the sunset. I got to see the sunrise. And it was a very beautiful experience. But I will have to say one thing is, I don't think anyone realizes how tall Mount Sinai is, 7,000 feet.
Jeez.
Yeah, I think about 75, maybe somewhere around there, 75,000 feet. And I don't think what nobody realizes is how serious, Moses' legs probably were. It was like quads and
for real, man.
calf workouts. This guy is. I don't think we really consider Moses very well, because that climb up the mountain was really insane. But the trails and everything were there's kind of a modernized trail. And our tour guide talked about, the history of it, how the trails had to be changed and smoothed out. So, but seriously, that entire climb was what was Moses going through? Going up that mountain at his age.
That's good.
I know. That's what was going through my mind, is oh man, it's this guy walking up. How did he do it?
Yeah, why you gotta lead all these million people?
Exactly.
Climb up this mountain.
Grumbling and just talking bad about his people.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Probably hot too, and just cranky. Yeah. Dang.
Yes. But once you got onto the top, that's really where it was all at. Total silence up on top. You couldn't hear vehicles in the distance. There was the whole the chain of, I don't know if we could call it a chain of mountains, because it's just mountains everywhere. And Mount Sinai to me, it looks like Mount Sinai was third tallest, because right behind Mount Sinai was St. Catherine's Mountain, St. Catherine's Peak. And then behind it is another mountain. So I think St. Catherine's Peak is second, but the one behind it is also probably the tallest one. So, but it was, whichever one Moses climbed, he really...
It's still a climb.
It's still a climb for him. It's pretty wild. But, total silence up there. And I think, experiencing what Moses probably experienced, even Elijah when he fled from Jezebel down to Mount Horeb, and the assumed location where the cave of Elijah is just right below.
Yeah, I've seen the video of that one.
Mm-hmm. And what they heard, what they seen, what they experienced, the silence up on the mountain was really astounding to me. And the entire world is blocked out. And you're just focused on the entire view that you see. And it really took my breath away. But because it's January too, it's really cold. Right. But that day when I hiked up to the top, it was pretty warm and temperatures were okay. It wasn't that cold, but when the sun set down, it was like it dropped really quickly, and not even the sweatshirt that I was wearing was trying to keep me warm.
Oh, man.
And there was all these other cats around the place. Like again, it's like cats everywhere.
See you on top of the mountain.
Even on top of the mountain, I posted that on my Instagram page. But it was beautiful, and just what Moses probably saw. And I guess you could say, anybody would go up. Anybody who would go up there would be looking for, God speaking to them. But I didn't. But what I did have running through my mind and settling upon me through the Holy Spirit was several passages of being reminded of several passages or stories, I should say. Just the glory of God being displayed when Israel had left Egypt and they were in front of Mount Sinai, and they saw the glory of God upon the mountain, and the clouds gathering, the thunder, and the earth shaking. Just being reminded of that, and even the story of Elijah when he fled to Mount Horeb, and what God revealed to him there. Rocks breaking, fire and wind, but nothing but just a still small voice. And just how quiet that was is like, yeah, I could have probably heard that voice too.
Yeah.
But it was it was a real amazing experience just to be there in that silence and just to be reminded of that. And there's that passage, let me pull that up, because I really, emphasize that passage of Exodus. Hold on, pulling out my YouVersion app. But no, not that. In Exodus chapter 34, where it says, "And the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation." And Moses quickly bowed his head toward the earth and worshipped. And that passage was what stuck to me on top of the mountain. It was pretty cool being reminded by that. Immediately there was this group of Koreans. I could be mistaken. They could be Chinese too. And I have the video of what they did. But this group of Asian people just came out of nowhere. It's like they were taking pictures and just doing their tourist stuff. But what they did was that eventually there was this chapel up on top of the mount, and they all gathered together, and one person stood up and he led everyone into prayer. And that really amazed me. I was like, oh my gosh, are you doing this up here? Are we having church? So where's Micah? Someone get a tambourine.
Yeah.
Because they did a good job, and that really humbled me, and that really just settled me more that morning into, just how the Spirit was really speaking to me. And they prayed, and I don't know if he was the pastor or not, but after praying, he just spoke to the group, and he might have, basically in whatever language, Chinese or Korean, but he really spoke to them, and I could just feel it. I could just sense, whatever he was talking about. And then he led the people into a worship song, and that really touched my heart. And because there are many various types of people going up that mountain. They're not Christian. Some are Muslim. Some are New Age. And some are from India. Some are from other parts of the world. And they're just up there either just to hike, get the hiking experience. I've seen people, do meditation up there. But whatever it was, for this group here, they also let everyone do what they do. And They just had their own little worship service and just gave the glory to God in the midst of that. And that really humbled me too, because the entire trip I was reading through the book of Psalms, and it just talks about David giving the praise for everything that God has done. From David to Solomon, Asaph, Korah, the sons of Korah, giving God the praise for a lot of things, being the creator of heaven and earth, being the sustainer of life, maintaining life, keeping order, establishing, the foundations of the world, ordering the planets and how the universe is. And in the midst of that, is that we hardly give praise to God for all those things. And, I could go up say I went up on the mountain with all these intentions. Lord, what are we doing for MIT? What is the message you have here for me to go back, to IBC to share with everybody or my family? Or I could have all of that, but in the midst of it, it wasn't that. It was just giving praise to God and exalting him, magnifying him for who he is, not for what I want, not for what I want to be, not for what I want to do, or how I can change something, but just giving him the praise for everything. And most importantly, because he loves us. And that's what I remember a lot reading through the book of Psalms, was the praise of God's steadfast love for us. That no matter what I've done, no matter what I did, how hard I may have made some things for God, I may have disappointed him, I may have frustrated him. I made it like, oh, here he goes again, doing it all over again. And he has the words, but he loves us. And that's a lot of reason to give him the praise for, is that no matter how shameful I may act or behave, he will still love me no matter what. And even if I don't repent, even if I do repent, he will still love me, and he will still pursue me no matter what. That's really what I came back with off that mountain. And really with a changed heart. And from there, just a total different experience after that. A lot of peace, humility, and comfort, and being encouraged in that moment with that group and other people that were there. They just watched and and supported whatever the group was doing, and they didn't oppose. They didn't retaliate or anything like that. They just let them be. And eventually the sun rose, and we all took pictures, and eventually, all of that went away. But it was good after everybody cleared out, and I said a little prayer for myself for the trip, because from there, it was moving on to the next part. Traveled out to this place called White Canyon near Dahab. And that was another experience. It was like, Page. Antelope Canyon. For anybody who's gone to Antelope Canyon, it was a lot like that. And then camping there for a night, near an oasis camp, being fed Bedouin food, more coffee, more tea. And that's the entire trip. That's all I had was coffee, Turkish coffee and tea, Bedouin tea, I should say, and Bedouin herbal tea. That was a good experience, better than putting a tea bag in your water.
Yeah.
I mean, they had it all made right there, and the food that they made was really good. A lot of curry, but it was really good. I loved it. I didn't eat with forks or silverware, whatever. I just ate with bread. A lot of bread, and it was pretty good. Yeah. And then from there, went out to Nuweiba, which is on the Red Sea, but also known as the Gulf of Aqaba. Caught a ferry ride from there all the way to Aqaba in Jordan. Met up and to eventually meet up with a team in northern Jordan, in the city of Al Mafraq. The team that I met there they were all working in this little, what is it called? Anur Sanatorium is the name of the place. and doing a lot of outreach to Bedouin people. They help, specializing mostly in chest and respiratory pain. But they also have other clinical stuff that they do, and got to see how they function, what they do, and how they serve. I got to go out to the eastern part of Jordan, the Panhandle area, to meet other Bedouin families that they do outreach to, and see what ministry is like there. Learning, that is where I learned the reality of of not just the Bedouin world but the Arab world, the reality of the same issues of what we deal with as Native Americans is the same thing they're actually dealing with, minus alcoholism. But there's a lot of drug addiction. One of the main drugs they have a problem with is called the Joker drug. And I know it's like all I saw was Joker images.
Yes.
And ha 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 ha.
Yeah, I remember you were sharing that. I was like, Joker drug.
Yeah, Heath Ledger and like, but that's really not what it was. But the Joker drug is actually kind of like a hallucinogen, and it can be mixed with other drugs, prescription medications, to get a certain high. But eventually you start hallucinating, you start seeing things, and eventually they go crazy, and sometimes they kill themselves. And so it's really bad. And it's not just, well, I should say that a lot of male individuals are in that drug dealing, and it's the only way out for them to lead a stable life. So that was hard to hear. But the assumption too around that too is that if you have a nice home, if you have a nice vehicle, you're probably doing drug dealing. So that was really hard to grasp. Another thing is that there's actually a lot of abuse and trauma, same thing that Native people go through, and they're experiencing it to a hard level too. A lot of animism, spiritualism, taboos, superstitions. But an abuse and trauma is like everything that comes with that. It was really hard to hear, for male individuals, that a lot of the males are, experience sexual abuse right away. And a rough statistic is that, in Jordan, maybe like, I could be wrong, but about maybe 30-40% of the boys, are sexually abused. In Saudi Arabia, it's like 50%, roughly. And in Oman, it's about 80%. And so there's a lot of mental health, behavioral health issues that they're trying to establish for them. And that really hit me because, I know what that is like. As a male Native American, sexually abused myself, and not having good male role models in my life, being mistreated, and not having a good, example set before me by any of the male members of my family, including my father, including, male leaders in our church, where, you're just left alone to yourself. And that was hard. Along with all of that, there's poverty. The government doesn't pay the Bedouins well. And the Bedouin way of life is all that they know. Herding sheep, herding goats, camels, that's their way of life. And there's not much that they can get. And the government tries to help them with much. The minimum wage there is, in Jordan dinars, it's about 290, I think, is what I remember. Almost 300 dinars. Which is, when you calculate that back to our currency, that's probably like $150, roughly. So, and that's only for 1 month. That's the minimum wage monthly, not every 2 weeks. And it's not enough. I mean, to have a good, stable household financially is about, 1,500 dinars to support your family. I could be wrong about that, but about $1,500, if I would say, if you convert it to US, about 1,000, just to support your family and their economy. But that's where the drug dealing comes in. And sometimes the other escape is through joining the military. And there's a lot of benefits that comes along with that. They're able to get a job right away. And eventually those jobs, lead to certain areas, especially, leading for them going back home and to be security guards back home in their area. And for them, that's okay. It's right near home for them. But I guess, when the government was setting all this up in the beginning, a lot of men wanted, because the way of life before, they were all warriors and they did a lot of raiding with each other's. There's still tribes too. They still have clan systems there. They still have tribal groups there, and they would raid each other's. And so the military came in and took away that way of life. They couldn't set a law that you couldn't do that. And so they had to find a new way. And so the only way to do that was to join the military. And the military said, you can only join the military unless you have an education. And a lot of Jordanians male Bedouin Jordanians would try to pursue that, but not everyone makes it in education. Some drop out, and eventually, that makes them leave home. They can't join, and so they go back home unemployed. And eventually, so what do? They go to drug dealing, or they just they go back to the Bedouin way of life. And eventually, that leads into greater things. So that entire reality just hit me, that there is a great deal that a lot of Native people can have in ministering to Arab people, especially Bedouins, and that the opportunity is still wide, and, the sleeping giant needs to wake up soon. So that was a real experience. It was hard, and it was in the middle of the week, which is just last week, Wednesday. It really hit me just hearing all of that, but I also just seeing the work teams there and how they're separated from their families really hit me too. I felt loneliness, I felt depression, felt disconnected, and even from myself, I felt disconnected from myself, and like, what am I doing? What, things that they could be asking themselves, I was already asking that right away. And I'm not a missionary yet.
Yes,
and I'm already going through it. And I feel like that was the Holy Spirit. Like, this is the reality. This is what it's going to take to be here. And I was like, and it hurt. It really hurt so bad, that being separated from my culture, being separated from the Navajo way of life, being separated from family, being separated from my tribe, being like the clan and everything, my IBC family here, even though I'll be graduated, but the reality of all that was setting in and hitting me so hard that, I could understand that this is what they're going through. The work teams that are there, just serving God, they're sacrificing everything just to be here, ministering to the Bedouin people, ministering to Jordanians in the hospital, in the town, in the urban areas, in Mafraq to Amman to Aqaba. And they're doing everything to forward the kingdom of God. And even at the cost of just, being separated from family. But the good thing was, in the midst of all that, their families have come out to visit them. And I guess, there is comfort still. And it's not always that, bleak, I should say. Even though it is hard, but it's not always like that. And it was good to see that, hear them talk about, my family was here and we got to do this. We got to go down to Wadi Rum. We got to go to Petra and see these, historic places and ride camels, go eat out to these Jordanian restaurants, or go hiking, go fishing, or do stuff, And so that really turned the light a little bit
Yeah.
after being like depressed for a while.
I think I hit hard with it. Yeah.
But when the week came to an end to leave Jordan, I left a little bit uplifted, just a little. I was still feeling it, and the team that I met, prayed for me. I prayed for them too, and I prayed for especially the Brazilian family that's there. They get a lot of Brazilians out there, I've learned, in Egypt and Jordan. And I guess Brazil is like sending out a whole bunch of missionaries from their country, and it's really wonderful to hear that. But the couple that I met, they're dealing with family health problems with one of their mother. Both of them, the husband and the wife, their mothers are dealing with health problems, and they're really feeling it right now. And so I prayed for them at that time. But overall, it was a great experience to be there. I was kind of happy to leave too. Like, not because of what I felt, but where I was at, it was just flat.
Yeah.
It's like a barren terrain. It's like a lot of rocks, but they're also having a dry spell too. They haven't had any rain, just like here in Flag, we haven't had any good snow yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of a warm winter for them. They usually get rain during this time, which helps with the foliage, feeding their livestock. But at the same time, I was sad to leave too, because it's like, yeah, I could see myself, but not here. Here. But I had a lot of respect for them, and I was thankful to have that reality check. Like God asking me, maybe not asking me, but telling me this is the reality I'm calling you to. This is the cost that I've asked you to consider of what it takes to be a part of my kingdom. And it was hard. And even to sit there in the guest house that I was staying at and contemplate all these things. And I was glad to do it all alone. But, it was really hard to contemplate and to soak it all in. And there was a part of me that, wanted to say, no, I don't want to do this. But at the end is like, I really do want to be a part of this. I really do want to be engaged with this. And then finally, leaving Jordan, catching the ferry over the Gulf of Aqaba at night, and then coming back into Nuweiba, making my way back to Cairo early in the morning, 1 o'clock traveling. Well, actually 3 o'clock. And coming back to Cairo, I was kind of relieved and to be in an area where it's kind of noisy. Yeah. Back in the crazy, back in the jungle again. Because it was like where I was at in Jordan was like really dry, really flat, and really quiet. I mean, even though I was staying in a town, it was kind of similar to Cairo a little bit, but not to its fullest. But it was just a quiet little town. But being back in Cairo, I was really glad. But the team leader that I met with, who took me out to the Sinai, I stayed at his place. And we just talked, and he really encouraged me in a lot of things for the 2 days that I was there, and just spoke great things to me, wonderful things about, what it takes to be a part of this. And that it is hard. There was a lot of things that they had to leave behind. And sometimes things turn out for the better for him. His kids are actually going to move out to Egypt. And so he's not alone in that, which is nice. But, he really spoke to a lot of great things, and mostly just encouraging me for the decision that I'll have to make and where I'll be in the Middle East, because that's really where it's at. I do have a desire to be in the 1040 window. I mean, others would say, it's kind of dangerous, and it's like this, and like, yeah, you're only saying that because of what you're seeing in news. And even Egyptians and Jordanians, what they shared with me is that America has this misconception about us because of what the news, puts out, and they're always reporting the bad stuff, never the reality of what the Egyptian goes through. And very hospitable, very generous people, willing to help you, willing to take you anywhere, and even buy you coffee and pay for your food and things. It's like I felt really bad. It's like I felt like I'm freeloading, right? But it was nice. I really appreciated it, and I was thankful for everything that they did for me, and ran into a lot of rough points, but I'm very thankful. Maybe like another episode we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Like what those rough points were, because I really was challenged by some of the security that I ran into. I felt really like a fool at sometimes. I was like,
Yeah.
But I was really thankful. Bought souvenirs for my family. They enjoyed it, and just thankful to be back and finish out the semester. And I think what's stayed true all the way through was, God's steadfast love. There were times where I was questioning how is this next part of the trip going to work out? Or is this what's going to happen next? Is somebody going to be there waiting for me? Do I have to do this on my own? It's like every step of the way, God was already preparing something. And it was like I didn't have no way of getting to the port where the ship was leaving, the ferry ride was leaving from Aqaba. And I was like, I have to go out into the city and probably just hitchhike all the way over there. But as I made my way out, I probably walked like 1.5 miles through the town of Aqaba. And there was this guy, just a taxi driver, a type of taxi driver, maybe an Uber or something. And he just asked me, he's like, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to the port. I need to catch my ferry ride at 10. And so he said, yes, let me talk to my shop owner. And they worked it out. And I only paid like about $6 to get a taxi ride. And I was like, that was a God moment right there. Made my way. And when I got to Nuweiba, had to go through security. I didn't have, physical $25 to pay for a single entry visa. But the guy there helped me. He said, I just need 20 Jordanian dinar from you. And so I just pulled that out, and he got my single entry visa back into Egypt. And every step of the way, I'm like, okay, but the ferry ride back from Aqaba to Nuweiba was delayed 3 hours, supposed to leave at 10. We didn't leave until 1. And my driver was picking me up at 1 that I scheduled for, and I paid $180 for that. I was I don't know what to do. It's like, so we left at 1 from Aqaba, arrived at 3 a.m. in the morning at Nuweiba, and he was more than willing to wait there, and I felt so bad for that guy. I was like, my brother, I'm sorry. But he was willing to wait, and once he picked me up, we just took off, and all the way, didn't have to stop at a checkpoint. Maybe at one that we stopped at, but all the security checkpoints, they just let us through. But when I got back to Cairo, he had to call his boss. His boss told me that because I made him wait 3 hours, I had to pay double, which wasn't so bad. In US dollars, it was only $70, which is like, yeah, no problem. I got you. And those were the God moments. It's like there was other points too where God met a lot of my needs and helped me along the way, and people were willing to help. So yeah, that's there's more I can talk about.
You might have to do a part 2.
I know. But it was a good experience, and I could feel a little strongly towards Egypt right now.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a starting place for me, but we never know. Everything in God's hands.
You guys want to say, you based off just all your whole story and the trip out there, and I could see that working for you too. Yeah, it's just amazing, man. Being my highlight from what you shared was how I had been studying at Mount Sinai. I think that when you were describing that, only seen videos of it. I can see what you're talking about. Because, like, even on the video, too, they actually capture that silence. I was like, it's, like, so surreal. Like, because, like, I remember that video there, he was introducing Morty in location, and he showed him about the Elijah cave. And so then he went up to Mount Sinai, and then it's just pure silence. He was just kind of panning around. I was like, dang, it's like, there's some crazy stuff. It's cool, man, just to hear your experience. And, yeah, I think we definitely have to do part 2, because like, I had some more questions to ask, but you also answered some of them with your whole spiel there. So,
Yeah. It's a mouthful, I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, it's like you go on these trips and you're just a storyteller from after you experience them.
And I was cracking up when you saw your Instagram post of the cat. And I was like, it's just a holy cat.
I know. For one thing, I will say too is that it's against the law to kill dogs and cats in Egypt. They have a law against that.
Dang.
So you just have to let them be. So they're just running around. It's funny too because it's like in Cairo, we're walking through the streets. There's dogs that will just pop up on the hood of the vehicles, and there's a den on top of their vehicles. There's like 2 or 3 dogs laying up on there. Hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny because you kill a res dog, cats all you want. Yeah, we'll definitely figure out part 2. But this is really cool that there's a lot of encouragement, a lot of highlights that I know I can take away from your trip in Egypt. I know there's a lot. Maybe some of you guys out there maybe planning to do like a short-term mission trip, or even just go out and visit Egypt, because that is actually one of the goals. Because when I saw that video of Mount Sinai and then the whole Saudi Arabia, where the rock where it goes, really on that wire came out in that area too. I was like, man, it's all just mind blowing just to see the geographics of it and actually seeing it. That's probably makes it more living, more raw. Like,
and you're actually seeing where Israel made their journey through in a lot of areas.
Yeah, that's what.
And then you're just asking, like, could they have gone through here? Like, am I walking through one of their places?
Because they even, like we were saying that too, the pyramid, so they never thought of that. And all the people that walked through it, and they seen it. Seeing it, they probably seen the progress of it being built too. And that's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I just want to say thank you for taking time to share with your trip, and definitely get a part 2. We'll figure that out.
Get some questions ready.
Yeah. If you need more prepared questions. Yeah, man, it's really encouraging. Just really thankful to hear, because for me, as someone hopefully in the future do like some short-term mission trips like that, that's in a way it's really helpful for me to be ready for it, because I'm back in my mind, as I always say, like, if I ever do go on this trip, so I pray I won't really feel close to shot, but deep down I know I am, because I haven't been out the country before. But yeah, man, I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, thank you guys for listening here on RezRootz. We'll figure out part 2 with Kyon here, but just hopefully it was encouraging and really insightful, and I believe hopefully Emmanuel has some of the little pictures and stuff, as all the ways of Kyon was talking about, to help you see what it is and see what he's talking about. So again, thank you guys for listening. Peace.